I should have just brought me up. There we go. All right, that's me. I'm Gabriel Chapman. I work for NetApp. I came over with the SolidFire acquisition. I use this picture because my friend Ashley McNamara took it and airbrushed my face, so I actually look good in this. Normally, I look like a goblin. I've worked for a bunch of other companies. You see them down at the bottom there. I've worked in technology for 20 years. I was an end user for 15 years, like most of you. I begged to be part of Tech Field Day at one point. If I was still not a red lightsaber holder and selling stuff to people, I would probably be here being part of Enrico's little powwow. I always like to start off with a little moment of brevity because how many people here have seen Sharknado? It's a very American television movie. It's sharks in a tornado that get unleashed upon an unsuspecting American populace. And they've made 4 of those movies right now. So, I mean, it's just a really bad American joke. But it is, it points towards the fact that there really are no crummy ideas for the most part, right? In 2007, Steve Jobs is standing up on this dais, and he's up there talking about the iPhone, right? At that time, I had a BlackBerry. How many people here had a BlackBerry? A lot of people had a BlackBerry. Loved that damn keyboard, didn't you? Yeah. Still miss the keyboard, because I had all the BlackBerries. And here's a discussion between the 2 CEOs of BlackBerry, right? I don't know why a company needs 2 CEOs. Seems a little redundant to me. But he's saying, hey, you know what? Check out what these guys are doing. This is actually pretty cool. And the other guy's like, don't worry, dude. We're going to be fine, right? Were they fine? I don't think so, right? Because we saw what happened. We saw that just the other day they announced that they are no longer actually going to make the BlackBerry handset, right? They went from a market cap and a position of almost 30% market share, market cap of $75 billion, down to their market cap today is, I think, just a little bit under $4 billion. And they don't even have a market share that you can recognize because they really don't have a product. Now, why was that the case, right? Was it because the phones were sucky? No, they're a great phone. I loved it, damn thing.
Well, it was a good email client. It was lousy.
It was a great email client, right? Because this is what happened, though. We went from doing stuff on my laptop or my desktop to my laptop to now I do everything on my phone, right? If I asked you how many applications, I mean, this is how I got here, right? I use these apps on my phone. I don't, if I use my laptop to do presentations and things like that and to create content, but for the vast majority of the things I do, as somebody who flies around about 160 days a year to go speak to customers and engage, I do a lot of stuff on my phone. How many people here have the Pokemon? The Pokemon. Pokemon Go goes from 0 to surpassing Twitter in 7 days. That's crazy, right? Look, these are some stats I pulled the first week Pokemon Go came out because I thought it was kind of bonkers. I personally refused to get the program because I would be one of those people walking the dog 6 times a day. 43 minutes a day on Pokemon Go. They did $4.5 million in revenue the first day. Something like what? 35 million in 2 weeks, 75 million downloads in a 3-week period. That is awesome, right? If I asked you to take out your phone and start to count the number of applications on it, and you can do this over I think there's a setting in an iPhone or one of these things that'll tell you how many it was. I have 155 apps on my phone. I gave this presentation to a customer in California the other day. Guy had 608 apps on his phone. I said, give me your phone and a hammer because we're going to fix this real quick. But if we look at it from the standpoint of all of the different things we interface with on a daily basis, what is driving digital transformation, right? It's all the things I can do on my phone, from Apple Pay to the Uber that I took here, to all the registrations for all the different things that I do, to do my banking, to buying a chicken sandwich at Chick-fil-A. They don't have Chick-fil-A over here. You should, if you go to the United States, just try it. It's a good chicken sandwich. But Chick-fil-A, what do? They gave everybody who downloaded the app a free chicken sandwich, right? Cost them 50 cents. Guess what? They're the #2 app in the App Store. I'm buying market share with the bribe of a chicken sandwich. But then I get to take all that data and the analytics because then people are going to use it. People are going to go and use my app to buy more chicken sandwiches. It didn't cost me a whole lot. It cost me 50 cents a user. How much did Facebook pay for WhatsApp? Something like untold billions of dollars to buy 600 million users across Europe or whatever it was. Buying that digital economy, that is where the power is going to go in terms of certain types of organizations. When it comes to marketing, online reach, getting to customers, getting to the fact that I do more stuff on my phone than I do on any other computing device on my planet. How much does an iPhone cost retail? Like the good one, $1,000. That's an expensive computer. All right, so when I was in IT, and at about 2011, I moved, right? I started standardizing on stuff, then I got into virtualization, and then I got into kind of like looking at automation and orchestration, because I think those are really important things. This was kind of like the line of demarcation for a lot of customers. We kind of see the spot where we get to virtualization, and then we're like, oh, we got to kind of automate some of this stuff, because there's no book called The Joy of Menial Tasks, right? I don't want to have to do the same thing. If I have to do something more than once, I am going to automate or orchestrate it. And you see a lot of work around that space right now. Puppet, Chef, Ansible, Salt. Those are all integration points. You have all the vRealize products. You have all this. Everybody's trying to automate and make things super simple. That's legacy thinking. It still exists in certain respects, right? If you're basing your compute infrastructure and decisions on the standard ITIL-based model, you are legacy people. You're not the future. You're going to die eventually. And we're all going to die, but the thing is that model of computing is going away. Next gen in DevOps, and if I feel a little jittery up here, it's because I'm probably working about 2 hours of sleep and about 600 cups of coffee. I flew from California. It's 15 hours to get here. It's crazy. To speak for 30 minutes. Isn't that awesome? All right, so next gen DevOps. That's really kind of what I'm looking at. Right? I want to get there. Most customers that I talk to, and I talk to a pretty broad, deep breadth of them, are in this kind of process of getting to this point where I want to go over here. This is cool. This is fun. But most of my stuff is back here. And I'm probably right about here in terms of crafting and delivering a policy-driven, automated, orchestrated, whatever, right? All the buzzwords. I'm trying to get to this spot where I can take advantage of as-a-service type offerings, right? Infrastructure as a service, IaaS, CaaS, PaaS, nobody computes for free, okay? That's the model that we want to get to. Now, there are certain industries. We just heard about healthcare. Healthcare, no, they're never going to get here, right? Because they're heavily bound by regulations and things like that. But there's a whole bunch of other people that are building applications that are trying to make that leap from one place to another. There is no easy button to get there. I can't just take Exchange and as a service it inside my own organization. In fact, I'm probably just going to go to Microsoft and buy it from them anyway. Different tool sets for digital opportunities, right? Oracle does not run on my phone. Some things that power apps on my phone do run on Oracle. The vast majority of apps that are being developed today, those guys, the kids that are coming out of school today, they are not learning C#. They're using Golang, they're using Swift, they're using all these new languages that allow them to afford to program, leveraging a bunch of different tool sets that most of us it's still hard for us to grasp. And then you have things around IoT and VR and AI and Internet of all the stuff, right? And that's where the big data and the analytics and all those different bits and pieces come into play. It's not commonplace for most organizations, but they're starting to realize that these are the tool sets and platforms that are going to kind of empower them as they go forward, right? Because I don't want to spend the rest of my life paying Larry Ellison for another island. Oh, gosh, Gartner. Sorry.
You said the G.
I said the G word. So mode 1, mode 2, I do a lot of talking to mode 2, right? That kind of agility base. Think a sprinter versus a marathon runner. I do a lot of talking. Yes, sir.
Didn't Gartner recently bring out a report saying that bimodal was dead?
Bimodal may be dead, but mode 2 operational state is not. Okay? So I think I will agree with you. Mode 2, I would say bimodal as a concept is kind of, right? Organizations don't want to run two parallel orchestrations, but they do want to make sure that all the next generation things that they build are based off of these principles versus the old ones. And so that's where I think, in a certain respect, some aspects of bimodal are still very relevant, right? If I look at first platform versus third, I talk to the third platform people. Now, everything that's old is new again. Guess what? Bare metal is making a big-ass comeback, right? It really is. If you start to look at where containerization is going, that's bare metal. I have no reason at all to put that onto a hypervisor, okay? And there's other things that are going to get that space too, but we're kind of like you say, we'll probably go back to mainframes. And what's a cloud? It's just a mainframe, to be honest. Or it's a computer someplace else. It's really that. I was at VMworld the other week and listened to Pat Gelsinger get up there and say, hey, by the way, in 14 years, half the people on the planet are going to run their stuff in the cloud. Yeah, I think a lot of people will run some stuff in the cloud, not all of it. If I'm the standard SMB mid-tier customer that's got, say, 10 VMware hosts and 200 virtual machines, guess what? I'm going to put as much stuff as I can in the public cloud because it's cheap, right? I'm going to run it up there so as long as I can, or I'm going to turn it on just in time to leverage a workload or a use case, and then I'm going to turn it off, some kind of utility-based computing model. And then there's some others, hyper-converged is a really good fit for them. But then there's these large organizations where they're going to try to do some kind of half-ass hybrid story. And the reality is that that transition to building private clouds for our internal organizations is very much real. There's a lot of private clouds out there today. They just don't call them that for the most part. I mean, really, what is virtualization with orchestration and a self-service portal? It's just a cloud, right? And you can do that with a lot of different products that exist today. OpenStack is a very hot commodity in the customer spaces that I speak to, and I speak to a lot of hyperscale customers and very large enterprises. In fact, in my particular patch of the world where I live in, Southern California, the Western United States, 50% of my opportunities are OpenStack based. That's pretty impressive and interesting to me, right? But public cloud has its challenges. The AWS bill is 700 million line items. If you print that out, I think it circles the earth like 100 million times or something like that, at least once. But that's crazy, right? I talk to customers on a daily basis, and anywhere from somebody who's spending $4,500 a month on AWS to $4.5 and $5 million. Think about that. What could you do with $4.5 or $5 million a month? You could build a lot of cool stuff. DevOps, all right. Who's seen Zoolander? Probably one of my favorite movies in the world, but it is so damn hot. I mean, really, it is so ingrained with so much of the stuff that I talk to, at least in the spaces and customer spaces that I talk to. Yeah, it's not for my small SMB companies, for the most part, unless they are a software development house and that's what they're focused on. But the reality is that I was at a conference the other week, and lucky me, I get to present and follow Gene Kim, the king of DevOps, and give a DevOps presentation afterwards. And the fact that he took pictures of my presentation, that felt good. But this is the book to read. If you haven't, here's read it, hands? Yes. All right, go get it like after this presentation. Just read it. It's like 8.5 hours in Audible, or it's like a day and a half reading. New Kingmakers is a pamphlet that's very similar to this and much more consumable as well. It's like an hour read. This is my customer for the most part, right? I work for a storage company. You think I should be talking to developers? That's the only people I want to talk to. You know why? Because they very much follow the kind of implementation space and thinking that I want to sell to. Because believe it or not, I sell a storage product for people who hate storage products. At least the one I do is the SolidFire component of it. I got a whole bunch of other stuff for people who love storage. Dude, I'll sell that to you all day too, right? But the reality is these people have a very different mindset in terms of who and what matters to them. These guys love APIs. They could care less about the infrastructure, right? And if I look at what DevOps is, right, it's the merger of developers and operational states inside there, and they have different different aspects, and they're trying to communicate. And honestly, up until recently, it's been kind of it's not been the best integration point. Once virtualization took off to the strength and point that it did, it really kind of enabled a lot of this, right? And really what they're looking for are things like common API frameworks. They want to do all their stuff as code. They really don't have any understanding or awareness of the infrastructure that sits below them. Give them a common set of APIs, and they will go to town building their applications to integrate with this. Because their world is this, right? They plan, they develop, they test, they release, and they monitor and learn. And that is the cycle that they live through. This is the prism that DevOps people work with. To put it into more context, this is what a DevOps application workflow looks like. It's pretty complex and pretty, there's a lot of moving parts here. There's a lot of different products and software companies out there that you've probably not or may not have come into contact with. But it's good information to go out there and learn about it, right? Because this is the area that this is an area where people are starting to dedicate a significant amount of resources. Even better, go to Zebia Labs and look at the periodic table of DevOps, right? Which is pretty awesome because they break it down into these different element points, right? And if you hover your mouse over these, they pop out and show you a bunch of information about it. So it's like, it's free information. Go for it, right? It's just interesting because I worked for a company that based all of our releases on the periodic table of actual elements. Monolithic development blows. It really does. I mean, let's get real. Waterfall development cycle, what is this, 1999? No, I don't like this. I don't like this if I need apps that need to be flexible and need to do code commit pushes on a daily basis. When DevOps first started to take off, it was impressive to do 10 commits a day to production. There are a few customers out there that I've talked to that do 150,000 production code level commitments per day into their infrastructure environment. That's bonkers. Breaking it down, though, and how they really want to look at, I don't know why this is NetApp confidential. It's not confidential. I think not anymore it is. I'm going to have to kill every one of you. Sorry. But no, breaking it down into something more digestible. Containers, this is kind of like setting the stage for what containerization kind of is as well. But really, microservice-based architectures lend itself to a very much more agile and efficient programming construct. And when we look at the type of 12-factor apps that we're starting to see being developed, this is why, right? I have an app that I want to put out and deploy, and I have these different areas and bits and pieces that I want to interface for. And it's all via API and common code push and web-based interfaces, right? And that's what I'm doing to build, and Nigel's probably going to get up here to show you how to do this in about 15 or 20 minutes. Container space is hot. It is very robust. It's a lot of buzz around this, and you're starting to see more and more companies get involved in it. Look what Microsoft is doing with containerization. It's baking it into 2016. Not that I really ever want to use Windows ever again. But, Docker's pretty hot, right? And this is my friend Donnie over at 451, and he does this pulls from Stack Overflow to see how much people are talking about certain things. And this is the one we did when we did a presentation in Michigan a couple months back. That's how big and busy Docker is. If I look at it from this standpoint, we'll give you the slides. 5x in 1 year, right? We have to do the math for this one. Datadog pulled this down for us the other day. This is the one that it blew my mind, right? 2.7 million downloads in 2014, 500 million the following year. And we're going to go out and do the math for this one pretty again soon. I expect it. That's 18,000% growth. Hey, who wants to make a bunch of money? Get a job doing Docker. Because look at the demand for those jobs, 1,700%. There's not 1,700% for Exchange admins. In fact, they're trying to kill those people because they don't like them.
Yeah, but that's just because there was an outage and they want to kill them.
That's right. Container development is very much different, in how things are doing. I mean, it really is kind of like this kind of, this workflow, this process that we're going to go out there and look at how we're going to create these different tiers of services and classes of information and do a continuous integration, continuous development, and releasing things faster, becoming agile, becoming lean. There's all these concepts that float around there. There's 1,000 books written about all this stuff. Oh yeah, we can ignore all this. I'm going to move past some stuff. Oh, by the way, I work for the NetApp, right? NetApp. Got to fix that one. I know somebody's going to yell at me. We just released our native Docker plugin. Interestingly enough, it works for all the NetApp products below. One common plugin. That's pretty cool, right? Because nobody else has that. I'm just going to go out there and enable that code, and I can interface with all of my backend. Because guess what? Persistent storage in a container environment is actually a pain in the ass. Right? And we're kind of like, it's like building an airplane while you're running down the runway, right? Because we're trying to do this stuff, and we're trying to do it very fast because the release cadence is fast. And all of the things that we're trying to do are really quick, and we don't really know what we don't know. When I start to talk to customers that have been using Docker for a year or two, or they're trying to integrate with Mesos and Marathon, or they're looking at Swarm, or they're looking at DCOS, a lot of them are getting to this point where it's like, well, gosh, the ephemeral stuff is really easy, right? Because we don't care. Those are going to spin up, they're going to work, they're going to crash, and they're going to go away. But I am starting to come out and find applications that I do want storage persistence. How do I do that? How do I make it, A, persistent, B, how do I orchestrate the implementation of it, and C, how do I make sure that it will perform the way I need it to? Because spinning up 50,000 containers in 2 minutes requires some horsepower. Don't fear Janky. The first version of everything is Janky. So it's Iron Man, right? The first version of Iron Man looked like a trash can. He looks pretty good now, right? Lots of stuff is janky. Heck, that's Amazon in 2001. That's back when they were powered by Oracle, right? What are they powered by today? Lots of stuff. I mean, there's like 11 different database products. I mean, it's different stuff. You know why they had to go this route? Because you can't build one click on a monolithic database platform. You can't do half the stuff Oracle wants to do. 10 minutes, cool. I'll go faster. Relevance of storage. Yep, that's right, I sell stuff. So the struggle is real, okay? There's a big challenge out there for a lot of organizations, and these 4 tenets kind of fit into it. Can I migrate swiftly? Do the services and apps interact properly? I got a bunch of different hardware and stacks to work with. I have all of these challenges that I face on a different basis. And having somebody that can understand all of this That's like some super holy grail. It's like the Superman of technology, right? You get a bunch of people that get together in a room and try to figure all this out, and it's a challenge. How do you compete? I mean, hey, if you're managing IT today, who's your biggest competitor? Amazon and Google and Azure. Because guess what? You got internal business units that have a credit card, I just bypassed your entire value prop. And that's what happens in a lot of organizations. Hey, we're going to spin this up in Amazon. It's really cheap. It's easy to get up and going. No worries, right? And then next thing you know, it's the line of business application that 20% of your revenue's on, and you're stuck there. So if you can compete with them and do something like a OpenStack inside, which is basically AWS on site, or on premises, we don't say on-prem, that's cool, right? You have a lot of different consumption choices too. And it depends on who you are inside the consumption cycle about where you fit and what things matter to you versus what things don't. Because if I'm a hyperscaler, if I'm LinkedIn, and I got more time and money and effort and resources than it matters to me, I can build it before I'll buy it, right? You should see the servers that they build. You should see the servers that Twitter builds. I think they're like $400. They have one power supply, they have nothing redundant, there's no RAID cards or anything inside those boxes. They build a composable infrastructure thing, kind of like Facebook does as well. And the flip side is, hey, I worked for a startup, we were 400 people. Guess what we didn't have? IT department. I had one guy who basically imaged laptops and would fiddle with the ACLs inside the network, but that was about it. Everything else was a service. Interestingly enough, when we built SolidFire, we hit all 4 of these different consumption models. We sold it to service providers who sell it to customers as a service. There's about 300,000 customers that do that, right? I got FlexPod that I can work with, which is a converged infrastructure offering. You've heard rumors of HCI. I have no idea if it's legitimate or not. Who knows? You have a best-of-breed appliance, which is what most people buy, and then you have we have a software-defined model, right? Interesting enough, same common code base across all of these products, and I have a customer that can do all 4 in the same thing, and they can interoperate, and it becomes part of we sell storage services for the most part. I sell some block storage services for the data center, for the cloud consumer. Because a lot of organizations have this kind of challenge. It's a competing interest between those seeking incremental change that are risk averse and other people who are bleeding edge, and they have different desires and wants. And the problem is you probably have both inside your organization. Competing interests, people that are, hey, I want to go do this. I want to go build this next generation thing, versus a bunch of guys who are like, dude, I'm the AS400 operator. I only know how to push the button twice. Not that quite. Honestly, a lot of people like to say you sell flash. I mean, I didn't sell hard disk. I wasn't an HDD seller. So what does it matter? It's just a medium, right?
Say that like it's a heroin pusher.
Would be the first drug I sold. I want to sell a service. I want to sell storage services to the enterprise. That's really what I want to do. Because if I look at what the ecosystem looks like when you're building a product to deliver and push forward, you follow these kind of common steps where you build and you get to kind of peak functionality. And then you're like, oh, what else am I going to do? Or my customer says, hey, your product's too complex. I don't want to buy it. I want to buy this all-in-one printer box. The EpiPen of the data center, HCI. Or I'm a DevOps guy and like, dude, that's pale, it's bucket, it's stale. I don't even want to bother with it. Give me a common API and that's all I want to do. And a portfolio approach affords you a very different viewpoint, right? Because you have different products that fit different continuums. Ugh, so fast. I have the E-Series for performance at all costs, the Ricky Bobby of storage. You have different spaces inside the customer space where some people are more concerned with elasticity and scalability. Others are more concerned with host integrations and the application integration points. And then you have cheap and deep, or object. So I sell primarily SolidFire. That's really what I do for a living. We're a scale-out, shared nothing, distributed architecture. We sell, it's flash, it's performant, it's got guaranteed QoS and some interesting stuff in. And when I look at it, oh yeah, it's block only. Well, so there's no NAS. You want to sell it by NAS? I got a bunch of filer stuff that's really wicked. What these customers look for tend to be different, right? They're looking for multi-tenancy, they're looking for disparate workloads, they're looking for being able to assign SLAs and get them into the customer's hands and make sure that they're guaranteed all the time. They are usually looking for automation at first because it's really important to them. Like our first 3 iterations of our product did not have a GUI because nobody cared, right? All they wanted was, hey, what is the code that I need to implement storage inside my environment? Let me show you an example real quick. And I'm going to skip past some of this OpenStack stuff. Just real quick though, we kind of own the OpenStack space. And when it comes to storage integration points, right? So, and I think I have a picture of it here. Block storage drivers in use, and this is based on super user surveys. NetApp and SolidFire combined have 21% of production level OpenStack implementations were 1,000 cores or more. That's real computing. Not to say other things, but that's a real OpenStack implementation. Those are big private clouds, right? And then there's the other things that are like Ceph, obviously, because that's kind of free, kind of like a puppy's free. Stole it from you, Howard. Open source is great. And open source is free as long as your time is worth nothing, right? So there's some challenges there. We get a lot of customers that go down one route and decide to, hey, you know what? We want to go into production. Let's do something that's a little more solid and more baked. And if you look at also, where we're going at in terms of the different projects inside of OpenStack space, which is really, like I said, a very strong area for us. Not to say that we don't do VMware, because that's about 60% of our customer base, but I see a lot more transition towards this when we're starting to talk about cloud. And so, Manila, and look at the code base integration points, and you look at Cinder, which is the block storage construct, and you see how much market share that we have inside that space. We started when it started, right? One of our lead engineers, John Griffith, was the product technical lead that broke Cinder out of Nova and has spearheaded that project for the first 3 years of its life. We were doing OpenStack before most people even knew what it was, right? And so it's an interesting space to play in. You spend time and effort in those nascent technologies when nobody else sees the revenue potential, and it'll pay off in dividends in the long run. That's why we got involved in Docker very early. We had Docker integration native. We were working through Flocker and Conroy and some of the other solutions that were integrated in those points before people even saw the relevance and potential of persistent storage in a containerized environment. That space is growing so fast, I can't even keep my head around it. So I know I have a few seconds left. Additional resources, and the best Paul Verhoeven movie ever made was Starship Troopers. The Phoenix Project and the New Kingmakers are the two books that you should read, or two pamphlets. One's a pamphlet, one's a book. Really approachable, really good stuff. Podcasts, listen to Goat Farm, New Stack, Arrested DevOps, and the Changelog. And also, hey, guess what? We built a thing called the Pub at NetApp, which is a developer community. It's free to join. All of our GitHub resources and stuff are on there. You can go check it out because we have a lot of code that's for free that you can go up there and take a look at and play with. Like if you are playing with Docker, get our Git and get out there and play with it, because I think it's really compelling that you get your hands on with some of that stuff. There's tutorials and there's a lot of resources to actually share information with. So, knowledge is power. Q&A. No questions, I'm sure, right? I did that in 30 minutes. That's amazing. I know.
Yeah.
All right.
At the end of the day, it's like 10,000.
You're just wondering where I got the suit, right? It's the Dirty Harry collection at JCPenney.
Hello there. Just a quick question. Well, it's not. First of all, the first one is not a question. It's actually a sentence. Okay. I'm actually doing OpenStack installation across Europe, and half of my customers are using NetApp. If that helps.
Okay,
so I'm seeing the trends are, at least for what I see in enterprise customers, most of them are using NetApp because it's easier to set up on Cinder. Mm-hmm. And half of them is mostly on Ceph. So among the enterprises, what I'm seeing. So the question is, given that most of my integration relies on .ontap integration with NFS, have you seen what's your opinion on, if I may, on using Cinder with either NFS or iSCSI? So what you see as as your perspective on the other continent, what's the integration way of doing it?
So in my experience, and I do a fair number of OpenStack implementations and have a fair number of customers that work in that space, people that are doing Cinder tend to want to leverage it as a traditional block construct, right? So iSCSI tends to be the predominant route. No one is doing FC, so don't even bother investigating it. It just makes no sense. And especially for an OpenStack customer, because I've gone in and talked to some organizations that are like, well, we like Fiber Channel because we're storage people, and I'm like, you won't like it in an OpenStack environment. You're going to either choose NFS and leverage the Filer-based solutions that are pretty well baked, or you're going to look at Cinder and go iSCSI. And Ceph does a lot of things really, really well, and I wouldn't sit and bash it because I've architected a number of solutions that have both Ceph and SolidFire, right? If you need performance-based implementation in OpenStack, if you want to do guaranteed quality of service down to the individual instance level and spin up 70,000 instances and run that in an environment, because I have customers that do that, we tend to be a faster route to market with SolidFire in doing block, right? The flip side of that is all of the work that we've done with all-flash FAS and integration points into those solutions also expose a lot of functionality through NFS. So you kind of have a product base, and then we also have object store solutions as well. We can go into AltaVault and some of these other products. We have a fairly robust OpenStack implementation that can span across all the different consumables inside an OpenStack environment. In the SolidFire world, we've just basically pushed all of our functionality into Horizon, right? You never even have to go into the SolidFire solution itself to do anything. It's 4 lines in the comp, and then you're done, right? And then so that exposes all the functionality through extra specs, and now you have QoS settings inside there. You can create classifications of storage. You can basically create flavors for storage, which is kind of nice, right? And then you can actually put SLAs around those because we can guarantee the performance at the min, max, and burstable IOP rate.
Right. If you can report back, I would say kudos to your engineering because it's really 4 lines of code into CinderConf,
Yes.
which is really amazing. And I do agree with you that usually when fiber is involved in my project, because customer want to have absolutely fiber, that's where nightmare begins.
Yes. Yeah, somebody has come to us and said, can you rewrite the fiber channel implementation for OpenStack? And we said, yeah, but we really don't want to. Because why would you? Right.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Anyone else? Awesome. Hey, thanks for having me over.
So we have a coffee break now.